She founded the Women's Rights Project with the ACLU in 1972, having started out as one of only 9 women in her freshman class at Harvard in law school. So she was kind of a pioneer in her own way. And we're going to hear this evening from 3 female lawyers who would hopefully be able to share with us what that particular, I'm hearing some background, I'm not sure what, to see what in particular Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her work in the courts may have, what role that may have played for her in their choice to become a lawyer, and what role they feel that she has played in defining the law, particularly from the bench as a Supreme Court justice. So let me introduce to you our 3 panelists. I'll start with the one that should be on my left on your screen, if I've got my directions correct, and that's Sandra Thompson. Sandra is located in York. She is a graduate of Widener University School of Law and has been a practicing attorney since 1999. Sandra focuses a lot of her work on issues of social justice. And so she's going to bring quite a bit to the discussion this evening, I believe, when we talk about the kinds of cases that Ruth often weighed in on. On my opposite side is Jamie Bonser. Jamie is Assistant Director for the YWCA Safe Home. She is a graduate of West Virginia University and has been a lawyer since 2011. And on the bottom of the screen, you will find Taylor Thomas. Taylor is a graduate of Michigan State and has been practicing law with the Becker Law Group since 2018. And all 3 of them come to the law from a different perspective and practice law in different areas. So I think it'll be interesting to hear how Ginsburg's decisions and her opinions, particularly her dissents, how they influence the type of law that each practices. I'm going to ask each of them to just give me a moment of reflection on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What does she mean to you? What do you think she should be most remembered for? And then I've got some questions for you, and hopefully we'll get some questions from our viewers as well. So Sandra, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of when you think of RBG?
Pioneering, open doors, and access. So that's the first thing that I think of, because she was able to open doors for women in law and as attorneys, and to have them respected. Then myself as a Black woman, an attorney, that helped to start opening doors for all of my demographics, that intersectionality of being woman and also Black. Mm-hmm. So her quote of women will only have true equality when men share with them the responsibility of bringing up the next generation is definitely what we say for, again, gender equality, but it's also what we say for racial equality, that was deemed to be the majority must also participate in making equity and access.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jamie, what about you? What comes to mind for you?
Actually, I thought long and hard about this question, and I hate to take the easy way out, but I was greatly impacted by Justice Ginsburg's death last year in September of 2020. And I remember at the time of her death, there are many pieces written, and Linda Hirschman, who had written about a book about Justice Ginsburg and Justice O'Connor's time on the bench, had a quote in an article in Politico that I think more than I can put in words sums up the impact that Justice Ginsburg had for me, and I think almost every female attorney. And it says, working in the footsteps of Thurgood Marshall, she slowly and methodically pulled the Constitution towards a larger circle of equality. She was not the most important justice, even if she was the most famous one. She was, as one of my sources told me, quite simply the most important woman lawyer in the history of the Republic. And I think for me, that sums up the impact that Justice Ginsburg had for us all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Taylor, what about you?
For me, I think about her strategy. She had a very strategic mind. She was extremely patient. And when you read anything about what she was thinking when she began working at the ACLU and began taking on women's law cases, equal rights for women, she spent a lot of time working kind of one at a time. She knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. And she took smaller and smaller, not smaller and smaller, but small cases after small cases to make a large impact. She knew that it needed to build on itself, and she had a very far-reaching goal in mind, and she knew to get there, it wasn't going to be one giant case. It was going to be a lot of small steps. And I think being a new lawyer, that helps me a lot. It helps think that, you know, I'm not going to know everything right away. It's going to be a learning curve and it's going to take some time, but think about how much she accomplished throughout her career. And that, I mean, that's definitely something to aspire to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite of her quotes is that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. And that's always a difficult pill for me to swallow because I'm a very impatient person and I want to get from point A to at least Q very quickly, if not from A to Z. But Ruth was very willing, as you said, Taylor, to build one case atop of another, and even sometimes to take on cases that didn't seem like they were doing much for the cause of women's rights. I remember a case where she fought for a male spouse of a deceased woman to get her Social Security benefits so that he could stay home and raise their infant child. And a number of people questioned that, but she was pretty straightforward as to say that in the case of showing that discrimination hurts people, period, she needed to show it from both sides of that case. One of the things that I have found most interesting is in looking just at her lifetime. She started school in 1956, and she was one of only 9 women in her law school. By 1977, that percentage of women in law school over the country rose to about 30%. So about 30% of all of the new freshmen enrolling in law school were women. In 2020, just a few months ago, the Bar Association has determined that the new students entering law school just a few months ago in the fall of 2020, there were 69% women. So, and I really think Ruth Bader Ginsburg must have had an influence there. Do you have any recollection, any of you, what the number of women were in your class in law school? Was it half, small number, large number? What was the demographic like for you?
So for me, that was during the years of around about 95 to 99. And it was at least, I would say, a good 40%, if not close to half. So great strides had been made even at that point in time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Jamie, do you recall?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2011 of a class of 123. West Virginia University School of Law is a smaller law school, and 52 of those of I was amongst 52 women who graduated that year.
That's great.
I do want to call out, because I was not aware of this until I researched for this presentation, but call out to WVU College of Law. They graduated their first woman law student in 1895.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And before we take the question that it appears that Lou has, Taylor, what about you? You're our most recent graduate. That number should be approaching close to what the American Bar Association said for last year.
Yeah, I looked it up to what the statistics are today. I don't know what exactly they were when I graduated in 2018. It felt like there were at least half, if not more, women. But
Okay.
the Michigan State website said today it was about 45% women.
Okay. All
So
right.
a little below half.
A little below. Okay. Lou, what are we hearing from those who are listening?
Here, there's a two-part question. When you entered law, did you feel any doors were closed to you? Do you find any discrimination from fellow male lawyers?
Who wants to tackle that one first? Sandra, you've got a big smile on your face. I'm going to go to you if you don't mind.
Well, I was really, yes, I want to make sure I give the other ladies a chance to speak as well. So remember, I do have the intersectionality of also from being a woman as well as being a Black woman lawyer. And there are current articles of Black women lawyers as being one of the most disrespected lawyers, just in really Black women in business, period. Law is no different. But that woman issue, when I started in the legal realm as a probation officer around about 1993. So even though I said again around 99, there was a good percentage of my graduating class who were women, the reality is when I started practicing law, even in 1999, there still were not a lot of women lawyers. There were also there were only 2 women judges on the bench in York County at the time. That was Cheryl Dorney and Penny Blackwell. So that was still a time where it was even more so the good old boy system, and women were still scratching to be accepted and find their way and have their voice. I was, thinking about this time. That was even back in a time where you could not even have an uncovered tattoo in court. You would be sent out to court and the judge wouldn't even hear you. Men could not wear earrings in court. This was again in 99. And again, I could probably even go back to somewhere around 93, 95 when I was a probation officer. So even that was a different time. So from then and continuing, it is still a struggle. It's still a struggle for women, and it's still a struggle for Black women to be respected and heard.
I can imagine that you're kind of getting that door slammed feeling from both sides there. Yeah.
Well, you still have intimidation. You have, again, I don't know other women's experiences, but I practice also in criminal law and family law, and more particularly criminal law. I've had male attorney to sort of like bolster and stand over me and trying to, let me know what I guess they were offering, what they were going to do. And I always say they don't know I was raised with boys, so that type of stuff is not intimidating to me. But yeah, so you still have that where it's showing that dominance, and you have, as a woman, have to be able to withstand that atmosphere and keep your composure. And then if it does affect you, then you have to find your quiet corner away from the eyes to feel the emotions, but remain professional and detached in the heat of things.
Jamie, I saw you kind of smiling and nodding. What you've experienced that physical dominance
I've had certainly opposing male and keep in mind I've practiced in 2 states and in multiple jurisdictions in a variety of areas of law at this point, and I've certainly had male opposing counsel oh, try to explain the law to me. Like, and they're,
Oh,
they're a first-year attorney, and I'm like, no, I've been through this before
yeah.
once or twice, thank you. But sure, please tell me what the law says.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that. I nodded with Sandra. There's the old male judge who you can't wear pants in his courtroom. You better
Mhm.
come in skirts and pantyhose. Don't be bare-legged either. Yeah, so I have experienced that as well in my career.
Wow. I didn't think it was quite that bad, So, Taylor, I would imagine you've experienced some of that as well, but I know your area of law is primarily divorce and custody. So, are you seeing that more from that kind of male bravado, more from other lawyers and judges, or from opposing clients?
The client question is interesting. Sometimes I think that I have experienced it more. I do general practice. I do focus on custody and divorce, but when I do get into other areas of law, I do get a lot of, it seems like it'll be other male attorneys that want to act like they're doing me a favor. Type
Oh, okay.
thing that, and I don't know if it's just, and I'm hesitant to think that there's anything necessarily, it's hard for me to tell if it means what I think it means, or if they're trying to be nice to me, or they're actually trying to just coerce me into thinking they're doing me a favor. But about the pants, when I was in law school, my third year, we had a writing seminar and we did the oral arguments, and I had a teacher, and she was a female teacher, that said that, what you need to do going into courtrooms is always wear a skirt. You never wear pants. And which surprised me, because I mean, I had worked like during the summer as a law clerk and stuff and seen female attorneys wearing pants to court. And so that was surprising advice to me. But I always do make sure I don't want to offend anyone. But it's just an extra thing to think about, that male attorneys don't have to think about. They wear a suit and tie and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. So,
Or
Well,
high heel
I can,
shoes.
yeah, and I can understand the teacher, because the teacher is going based on history and experience and impressions. So I can understand that's probably where she was coming from. I was reminiscing of probably about a good, I'm going to say maybe 5 to 8 years, and maybe not even that long of 8 years, but many of the women attorneys we've started wearing boots. And when we started wearing boots into the courtroom, oh, that was a shocker. Because of the fact of what's expected, so wearing the pants was one thing, but then, you still, the pantyhose and the heels and what
Mhm.
type of heels that you wear. But, I think as we got comfortable and more self-assured, it was, as I said, there was quite a stir of us coming into court with boots, but nothing, not that no one said anything to me, but I know they have bar stools in York County. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's a play that lawyers and judges put on, and then what they do is parody things that go on in the courthouse and courtroom, and they made a parody of the women wearing boots in the courtroom. With these boots are made for walking.
Yeah.
So that
Oh.
was funny.
Ooh, we have another question.
Yes, you're sort of already in there with this question. Currently, do you find that the judges you were before have different expectations of female attorneys than male attorneys?
Yeah. Well, obviously, dress code is one of those expectations. So, anything else that you can recall from judges that they have seemed to have set themselves up to have different expectations?
I think in general, it comes to who you relate most to, you give more grace to. And that is why the increase of access is so important because, again, when you have predominantly male judges on the bench, then they favor male attorneys and they will give more grace to them. And then because, and when you're looked at as sort of being a pioneer into an area of law or the court or the justice system, then they expect you to prove your worth to be in that arena. So versus someone else who's normally expected to be there, they can be mediocre. You know, they can be average, they can make mistakes, you know, and they're going to get that grace. And whereas, again, people who are different get less of the grace.
Right. Yeah.
I've also found female judges can also hold me to a higher standard at times
Yeah.
as well.
Well, that's it, because it's like you're this example. You're here, you know, you have to represent better. And that is an extra burden because can I be normal? You know, can I present the law and in the same way as someone else? But because holding anybody to a higher standard based on their demographic is wrong.
I've heard that in other professions as well. You know, you consider nurses by and large are women. You know, there's quite a few male nurses practicing in our hospitals and doctors' offices, but the vast majority of them are women. And I've heard more than one female nurse comment that she'd much rather work for a male doctor than a female doctor because the females hold them to a higher standard. Not that the males accept sloppy work by any means, but that the female bosses expect a little bit higher type of feedback.
And also they are extra scrutinized.
Yes.
Because they had to work hard to get to where they are, and they realized that they are still scrutinized being a female doctor, being a doctor, even of a different color, a different race, a different culture. They have harsher criticisms. So then they know that any mistakes made from someone under them is going to be attributed to them at a harsher rate. So that's part of it as well. And yes, I agree. This is interchangeable to many professions.
Yeah. It's kind of like I've made it, and now I'm going to make you follow the same road. If you can think back a little bit to law school, did you find as a female student that you were treated differently than the male students?
I was a non-traditional student. I turned 30 my first year of law school, and I had 2 prior careers before coming to law school. So I don't know if I can speak to that as well, because much like Sandra having that intersectionality, at that point, I was not only a female, but an older female amongst the 20, 24, 25-year-olds. So I didn't socialize that much at law school. I kind of showed up, went to classes, and hung out in the library or at home. So
that kind of made you stand out, I think, again, probably. Yeah. But did you see the professors in law school addressing the females in class differently, or?
If anything, I saw them make like a greater effort. Like it was obvious in their attempts not to do that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
That they were trying and monitoring themselves to make sure they called equally on males and females, and that everyone is addressed by Miss or Mr. So
Taylor, what about you?
So when I was looking at this question, I don't think I'd ever thought about it before, which probably means in law school that I didn't notice it. So yeah. I don't really think I did, at least not in any of the classes I took. I had a lot of professors that did the cold calling method, which I actually enjoyed because it kept me honest with my readings and
Mhm.
stuff. So, but it seemed like it was pretty fair and equal. And I didn't think that they asked harder follow-up questions or anything like that. So, but again, I mean, I graduated a lot more recently, so that might also
Mhm.
have something.
Well, and you had probably had a larger student body coming from Michigan than the other two universities. You know, it would have been a bigger group of students possibly in the class at one time.
It was. I know my first year we had 4 sections of about 70 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, all the classes, most of the classes my first year were about 70 people. And then
Mm-hmm.
as you got to pick your own classes, they varied in size, but went down to as little as 12 people. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they were large.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sandra, what about you?
Well, so I was also a non-traditional student. So, and I was 27 when I went to law school, when I think most go straight out of college about 22, 23-ish or so. I had, my children were I had 2 children, I didn't say, but I had 2 children at the time I went to law school. They were 1 and 3 years old. So I did also have that. So same as Jamie was saying, that was also a different dynamic. And again, my issue is also different because of the intersectionality of race. And it just so happened that when I went to law school in 1995, and what wind up determining my experience there, what happened to be in October 95 was the O.J. Simpson verdict.
Oh,
That
yeah.
happened to expose professors and some of my classmates in their opinions. So that affected my law school experience. So, but other than that, I don't believe that I saw too much of a difference with women either. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe I saw too much of women students being treated differently. I mean, it was definitely a struggle for the non-traditional, and I think really I saw non-traditional of men as well, older men who had different professions. I did not notice a difference in treatment based on gender.
Yeah. Okay. Lou, you're back. Hello. We're
Yeah.
hearing from another viewer.
Sorry, yes. Do you think female judges and lawyers had stricter standards for you because they knew you had to be extra tough to succeed? Another question, are there hurdles that women still face in law?
Okay. I think we may have kind of taken care of that first one, but if you've got something else to add to that's fine. But let's take a look at those hurdles. What are the hurdles that you are currently facing in law or in your practice that you think are more gender based than anything else?
So I can start. Sorry.
Nope.
Go ahead, Jay.
Sorry. I think that I'm going to kind of go the opposite way. I think that a lot of times, at least like I said, I am practicing mainly divorce and custody, that being a woman has helped me relate to clients. A lot of, and when I started at the firm I work at, all the other attorneys were male, and well, they still are, but so I think that it was nice for a lot of clients to have a female to talk to, and it helps. They want to listen to what you have to say, and not that they don't to male attorneys too, but at least it's been my experience that they'll open up more. They'll be more open to hearing about different settlement opportunities, different strategies. I think that the communication for me has been helpful because of my gender. So not necessarily a hurdle, but
maybe a help.
Yeah.
So, Jamie or Sandra, either one of you have Jamie, I think you were going to say something.
Not so much hurdles in the law. I think they're the same hurdles that many women face. And like, because in addition to legal services, I also worked in a firm, a fairly large firm. And so there were definitely, I think any kind of woman in a corporate setting faces, it's hard to network with your male colleagues if you don't play golf on the weekends, or,
Yeah.
you're not in the fantasy football league with everybody. And so you do feel on the outside there. And so you don't have the because it's those personal relationships and connections that then lead honestly to advancement in a lot of cases, or might, if you're equal with a colleague, then someone with a personal connection is going to get just that little bit of an edge on you. And that definitely plays a part.
Absolutely. And I agree with Taylor, as well as Jamie, who said that there are pros and cons. So the pros is being able to definitely relate to clients, women that come in. Also in criminal law, pro is all from family law, as Taylor stated, but also for criminal law, if you're defending someone and the issue is dealing with different genders or something like that, you also can come in with a perspective that can be helpful to your client and help someone to understand, being the jury or whoever, to understand your client and your client's perspective. One of the other hurdles that I would say, especially during this time of the COVID-19 shutdowns, I mean, I think equally some men are experiencing it, but women being able to juggle the fact that they are typically also the primary caretaker of their children, and balancing child care and child activities with court requirements. If you happen to have an emergency with your child, and if you don't have adequate daycare or that's available during that emergency, that can affect court. So again, some of these are the same things that can affect other professions as well.
As well, yeah. Okay. Lou, another question. Lou, we can't hear you.
That would help.
That would help, yes. Go ahead.
Coming from the man behind the curtain.
Yes.
I have two questions. I'm going to give you one at a time.
Okay.
They're a little different. What is your opinion on the current makeup of the Supreme Court, male/female? Do you believe there is a need for more female justices?
Okay. That's a good one.
Justice Ginsburg famously said that there would be enough female justices on the Supreme Court when there were 9.
That's right. She did.
So that would be my response to that.
Yep. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? No? Okay.
I would agree. I guess we can allow one male's perspective. Just for diversity purposes.
So 8-1 wouldn't be too bad, huh? Yeah. Okay, Lou, what was that second question?
Hello, fellow lady lawyers. I was sworn in the same year as Sandra, but only 25 when I graduated. I found that the biggest bias came from clients. I was too young, looking to be taken seriously, and more recently was told that they would rather have a man. Anyone else have these kind of experiences?
Wow. That's a loaded experience, and I think that's one that crosses various kinds of careers. But what has been your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely, that is a common experience. Sometimes I get that I look younger than what I am, and so then people do question your experience on that. Sometimes you'll get, oh, hi, little girl, hi, young lady, or something like that. So, and so that was from 99 to probably last year.
Yeah.
So yes, that happens to be a continual thing.
Taylor, have you run into that?
Yes, I think that it's something I do kind of hear a lot. but it's also, I always try to remind myself that I haven't been practicing as long, but I do a lot of the type of work that I do. And,
Mm-hmm.
but it is, I think, a situation where you probably have to check in with yourself a lot more than later in your career to remind yourself that, you do know what you're doing. You put in the time, you have to be confident, but it's hard because I mean, you can walk in and sometimes just see somebody's face and they look a little bit skeptical, and then you have to convince them that you know what you're talking about. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
those are tough situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jamie, any input with that one or?
Yeah, although I had such a kind of a span of practice, so a lot of my career was spent in legal services, so I was their free attorney, so they
Yeah.
didn't get much of a choice over who they got. So that, I think that helps there.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I know you said that you spent time in legal services, and Taylor, I believe this is your first job with as a lawyer. Okay. And Sandra, you own your own firm. So when you started out though, right after you passed the bar, how difficult was it to find that first position? Did you feel that your gender was an impediment in that situation or didn't play a role at all?
Well, for me, right out of law school, I was a investigator with the York City Human Relations Commission. Then I went into legal services, which was at that time Central Penn Legal Services. Then I was assistant public defender, assistant prosecutor, and then that's when I opened up my own business in 2003.
Okay.
So again, my issue was also that I had children. So I had children, whereas again, as the one commenter spoke, that they were younger when they started in law, and they may not have had children. So you're more free when you don't
Yeah.
have children. When you have children, then you're thinking about not only salary, but you're thinking also about health benefits, those types of benefits for your children, which sometimes as a young attorney, you can sacrifice that if it's just yourself. Not everyone, but sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
so being that, so that's me being a woman, being a single mother. So that is an effect in that way. And yes, again, as I said, when I started in 99, there still were not that many women. Well, there were quite a number of women lawyers, but it still wasn't, I'm going to say, not an absolute preferred thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to absolutely say it was a hindrance or a barrier, but I think that it was a factor, a
Mm-hmm.
factor that needed to be considered, a factor that again you had to improve yourself that you belonged.
Mm-hmm. Jamie or Taylor, any input?
I think for me, I got very lucky. I was actually hired before I took the bar and before I passed the bar. So I got to begin working and learning, not going to court or anything, but just a little bit of training before I passed the bar. So I was at the firm already when I became a lawyer, which was nice. And I think just for me, timing worked out. My firm was looking for kind of a younger lawyer. So, because with any career, everyone wants 17 years of experience and you're
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
graduated. And so I remember when I was studying for the bar, looking for jobs and just thinking, if I can't get a lawyer job right away, where can I get legal experience? So I'm still in the field because I was worried about, I was in Michigan, wanted to come home. And so that also, I wasn't even in town. So it was a lot going on. So I got very lucky and I didn't see, um, my gender as a hindrance at all.
Mhm.
Anything,
Oh,
like I
good.
mentioned earlier, I think it might have been a bonus that now there is a female attorney, and I think that that perspective is helpful to the firm, and that everyone kind of felt that way.
Yeah, good, good. Um, okay. Um, Jamie, did you want to add something there, or, because I know
I
you
think
changed some, you changed locales as well as jobs, so that probably had an impact as well.
I will say my first job out of law school was with Legal Aid of West Virginia. And again, if any group of attorneys is diverse and accepting, and it's legal services attorneys. The executive director of West Virginia is still Adrienne Worthy, who's a woman, and there were many women in the upper echelons of the program. So yeah, that was a kind of an easier one for me.
Okay. I want to go back for a minute if we can, unless we have more questions coming from the audience, to RBG, to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When did, well, let me ask this a little differently. When did you decide that you wanted to become a lawyer? And to tag on to that, were you aware of Ruth Bader Ginsburg at that point in time? Taylor, how about you? When did you make that decision to go into law?
I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. It wasn't something, though, that I always felt was necessarily possible, though.
Okay.
So when I did my undergrad at the University of Pittsburgh, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I went in or what I was going to major in, because I was a little nervous that being a lawyer was just something that was unattainable for me. So, and I don't know why, but so I started taking classes that I was interested in, which was English, political science, and history, and just decided I was going to go for it. And I knew who she was as a justice on the Supreme Court, but I didn't know too much about her until law school. And we focused on some of her dissents, especially in constitutional law. And that is when I really did some research and kind of read more about her, and I don't say got to know her, but got to know her. So she didn't necessarily have a direct impact on me wanting to become a lawyer, but I think that she definitely helps me now that I am a lawyer, because there are days that are hard and days where I am still learning a lot of new things. And she's a reminder that I can do hard things, because she did some of the hardest things. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Sandra, I see you nodding. Ruth was appointed to the Supreme Court, and I guess you would have still been in school, because it was 93. So you may have still been in school.
Well, no, I didn't go to law school till 95.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, so yeah, when I was younger, I knew more about Sandra Day O'Connor, at that time. And I learned later, probably more, I'm not sure if law school, because she was still a new justice at that particular time, but definitely during my practice, I learned more about Justice Ginsburg. And I think I discovered I wanted to be an attorney somewhere either between late middle school, junior high, or in high school. And that's, being exposed. I went to an all-girls high school, Philadelphia High School for Girls. And I remember one of my first activism times was they wanted to incorporate girls into Central York, I'm sorry, not Central York, but Central Philadelphia High School. And that was considered the all boys school, which was considered the #1 school, and Girls High was somewhat like the #2 because we were girls. And we thought that that would have less prestige for us. We would get less resources. So we wanted to keep our autonomy. So we protested that. So that was kind of that same, that sisterhood and, hear us roar type of thing.
Yeah.
Independence and individuality. That was my first thought of toward becoming a lawyer. And also, and when I was a junior in high school, they had the Philadelphia Move bombings. So that was
Yes.
another thing of
I remember that.
justice. Yeah, and that was 1985. So that was another
Mhm.
thing of justice. And so that got me into social justice, and that got me looking toward being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jamie, you talked about having other careers prior to the law. What moved you in the direction of the law, and were you aware of Ginsburg at that point?
So I feel like the story of how I became a lawyer would probably take about 45 minutes to get
There a
through.
brief one?
My best answer is, and I hate to say it, it wasn't a calling. It was, I kind of fell into being a lawyer.
Yeah, okay.
Which is an odd answer to give, I understand. I certainly was aware of Justice Ginsburg. Was always kind of a nerd and a geek, and just was aware of her as being appointed as the second female justice to the Supreme Court. But was not aware of really what I consider to be like her extraordinary life in her practice prior to joining the bench, and what she did with her work with the ACLU. So I'm sorry to say, even though this is the RBG panel, she didn't play much of a role in inspiring me to become a lawyer, but I do recognize that without her work, I wouldn't be the lawyer I am when I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had in my practice.
Yeah. Well, and it's not uncommon for people to be a larger influence for generations after their lifetime than for during their lifetime. So we may find that young girls now are thinking about law who may not have thought about it before, simply because of the focus on her now. So, Lou, you have another question?
Yes, there are two questions. I'll give them to you one at a time. What is one piece of advice you would give to young women following in your footsteps?
Okay. As we're talking about those young girls who may be influenced by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, here's your opportunity to be that influence as well. So what's one piece of advice you would give women, young women and girls following in your footsteps or considering it? I'll give you a second there. Anybody ready to go?
So I would say, know thyself.
Okay.
A lot of this, what we've been talking about, and even something I recall Taylor saying, is people telling you who you are and what you know and what you should be doing. So if you have confidence in yourself and that you belong, then no one can tell you anything about who you are or what you should be doing. So that's my piece of advice, is to know yourself and be confident in yourself.
I think Ginsburg would probably second that as well. So, Jamie? Taylor?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on what Sandra said, something very similar, like set your goals, right? And work towards them. Don't let people, and know what your goals are. Don't let other people set your goals for you, right? Like, oh, this is a good thing for you to try, or this would be a good place for you to end up. But know what you want, and then follow Justice Ginsburg's example. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen immediately. Right. It happens one small step at a time. So don't be discouraged by it if it seems like an overly long process.
Right. So, Taylor, what about you?
I agree. I was going to say, I don't know if this sounds much like advice, but just do whatever you want. Like, don't let, because I mean, in my experience, I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I went into college not knowing or just doubting myself. I was like, I know this is going to be a hard thing. Is it going to be too hard? And I had a guidance counselor who tried to convince me all 4 years of college not to go to law school. He just kept saying there are not going to be any jobs. And I don't know if I never thought at the time about it being a gender thing, and I don't know if it was or not, but he said that the market was just oversaturated with lawyers by the time, or would be by the time I graduated. And it did give me pause a few times. And then at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I'm good at this. I like analytical thinking. I like reading. I like writing. I like researching. I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad I did. So I think that just do whatever you want. If you want to do it, you know, I mean, within reason, I'm not, but
Yeah.
obviously, but you know, if it's a career goal, it's not
Right.
unattainable just because it might be hard.
Right. Yeah.
Bless you, Taylor, for not saying that you went to law school because you like to argue or you're good at arguing, because
Yeah.
that's the one everyone always says, and you're just like, that's not what it's about. And it's
Yeah.
a very small piece. Yes, reading, writing, analytical thinking, those are the correct answers.
And that's the other piece of advice I would give, because sometimes students ask, what should they study? And you do not necessarily have to study. And actually, sometimes they discourage that you study pre-law or criminal justice or
Right.
something like that. But that reading, writing, and analytical thinking, those types of classes, research, those types of classes, that's what helps you.
Mhm.
Most successful lawyers were English majors, journalists, journalism, history, yeah,
Yes,
scientists. I had a lot of friends who had science backgrounds.
yes. Mhm.
Lou, I think you have another question on tap for us.
Have two.
They're growing.
Yeah, we got a very, very inquisitive audience.
That's good.
First question. Have you noticed a difference in the fees you are reasonably able to charge clients compared to the fees that male attorneys charge?
Well, I'm looking at the group and I'm thinking, Sandra, you might be the only one that could
That's what
answer that,
I was
because
wondering.
yeah, because Taylor, your firm would set those, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and you were with legal aid, Jamie. So, Sandra, it's all yours.
Oh, that fee schedule. Oh, that's that's one of those, another know thyself. I think you have to make yourself competitive, and you have to, just with any other profession, you have to know your worth and stick to that, because there's always people who will look to say, even I think, and they may even have some of that of, well, you're not really doing that much, and they don't understand the experience and the time that goes into the fee. So, and I also try to make my fees somewhat reasonable, somewhat in a level of above the legal aid, above the public defender, but not as high as the typical larger firms pricing. So somewhere in the middle. And, and I do try to consider the importance of the case and the likelihood that the person is going to be able to find an attorney for if they really do have a very important case, and especially if it's something that is going to be liberty and family. So, and it's not likely. Now, again, with liberty, they do qualify for the public defender. So, but with family, you don't always have that. So if a person's making a reasonable effort, then I try to have some concessions on that. But at the same time, you have to be careful of that, because then it becomes an expectation. So you have to set your limits. It's another thing of what we had already said in the last piece of advice, is set your limits, your expectation, and know your value, and don't let anyone else tell you what your time is worth.
Mhm.
Let
Absolutely.
your fees, even if you discount your fees, let it be your decision.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's very common in a lot of industries where those kind of industries where you get to set your own prices, that women will discount their services just because they're women. And it's not because they say it's not because they think they're not worth it, but they're trying to help. They want to help the recipient, but you can help them to the point of knocking yourself out of business,
And
and
that's
not being
absolutely
able to
correct.
maintain
Absolutely.
a business.
Absolutely.
Lou, I think we have time for one more question, perhaps.
And this may be a great one to end Enlightened Conversations tonight on. What needs to still take place to ensure that women lawyers are empowered and have the same opportunities as male lawyers?
Great question. Great question. Okay. Taylor, let's start with you.
All right. I think that we just need more women lawyers. I think that that's what needs to happen. I think the more that you see women doing things, it'll inspire other women to keep to do more, to do, like I said earlier, things that they don't think that they might be able to do for whatever reason, whether somebody's telling them they can't or whether they don't know anyone else that's done it. But I think representation is everything. Everyone wants a role model, and RBG is a great one. She wasn't afraid to disagree, and she wasn't afraid to be patient and confident in what she was doing, that it would take time, but it would happen. And I think that that's a great example for people to follow, and people will. And the more people will, more and more people will. It's that domino effect. So.
Right. Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, I think more women lawyers, but I also think more women lawyers spread throughout the spectrum of the legal profession, like more women judges, more women partners at firms. I know many great attorneys who have risen to mid-level and they got past those initial hurdles, but then never got recognized or never
Right.
was able to make it past their male colleagues. And maybe it was, as we discussed earlier, the expectations of them for family care and, not being able to bill 60 hours a week or, 4,000 hours a year
Right.
just wasn't going to happen for them. So I think more women lawyers and more ability to move up in the legal world is very important. And when a woman, we never touched upon this, but when a woman is tough, when a woman does stand her ground in a courtroom, she's not considered overly combative, right? She's just an attorney zealously advocating for her client. And I think that's something that would benefit us all.
Yeah.
We're changing the
Sandra?
perspective of that. So yes, to allow a woman to be just as strong as advocate as men are, and are expected to be. But yes, I think that access, increasing access and increasing examples, visibility of women in all aspects of the law, as Jamie stated. I was surprised when Taylor said she went to law school in 2018, but still didn't believe that she could. 2018. So, and she had a school counselor trying to discourage her from going. So we need to get into the junior high, elementary, junior highs, high schools, and let them know that women can be whatever they want to be.
Absolutely.
So if a young child says they want to be an astronaut, then we say, okay, great, this is how you do it. Versus, no, that's too, pie in the sky, that's come back down out of the clouds. So let's give them the tools, let's give them encouragement that they can do it. My daughter wanted to be a doctor, and her counselor said, no, think of something else. So that was also just a few years ago. So we have to stop killing dreams. We have to just learn how to empower the dreams, how to equip the dreams. If their grades aren't that good at that particular time, then show them how to get better with their grades. Show them how to develop relationships and mentorships. Invite more people already doing it, lawyers or judges or whoever, into the schools. So lawyers and judges think more of community service and go into the schools. So that's what we should do.
Yeah, I like that line, Sandra, and I know you didn't mean it as a line, you meant it as actual advice, but that's a memorable quote, I believe, that we need to stop killing dreams, because I think we do that way too often, particularly of our youth. So we tell them what they can't do and not what they could do. And I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is one example truly of someone who basically told everyone what they could do, male, female, white, black, Asian, gay, straight, it didn't matter to her. She wanted to set the bar high and let people know that all of us had that opportunity to reach it. I thank you, all three of you, for your time tonight. I know that it's awkward sometimes having three people talking, on a panel, but you all handled it beautifully, and I thank you for your assistance with this. I would recommend to those who are listening, if you haven't had the opportunity to watch the movie RBG, or to read the book, The Notorious RBG. It's a fantastic book to read, great movie to watch. And I think there's another one also, and I can't recall the title right now, In Her Words or In My Words, I forget which it is, that are actual excerpts from some of her writings. Will give you a great insight into Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her way of thinking and her way of looking at our country and our world. We have another Enlightened conversation coming up in April. We try to do these once a month. Our next one is scheduled for Thursday, April 29th, again from 7 to 8. And our topic this time will be drug issues in Hanover. So if you are available that night, we would love to hear from you. Drop into the YW website and check us out. It would be Thursday, April 29th from 7 to 8. And if you can't make it that night, Lou will post it on YouTube and the YW website shortly afterwards. Just as this one will be posted on YouTube very soon. So for now, we'll say good evening. Thank you for being with us. Until we see you next month, be safe, be well, and please be kind. Thank you and good night.